Did I tell you the one about the survey that someone was going around taking a survey with 4 nationalities? The nationalities were, there was a Russian, a Pole, an American, and an Israeli. And the question that this person wanted to know, the survey was, very simple question. Excuse me, sir, what is your opinion of the meat shortage? So he went to the Russian, he said, excuse me, sir, what is your opinion of the meat shortage? And the Russian said, what's an opinion? Now this plays a little better if you go back of time when the Communist Party was in full control, although it seems that they're coming back. So the Russian says, what's an opinion? The next day we asked the Pole, excuse me, sir, what's your opinion of the meat shortage? And the Pole said, what's meat? And then they came to the American and they said, excuse me, sir, what is your opinion of the meat shortage? And the American said, what's a shortage? And then finally they went to the Israeli and they said, excuse me, sir, what is your opinion of the meat shortage? And the Israeli said, what's excuse me? So, we've had a long history of making fun of Israelis, that they're rough and tumble and, they're arrogant and rude. And possibly, there is maybe a 2% chance that this is true. But we've had a lot of fun doing that. But maybe if you thought about this, what the Israelis had to go through and what they continue to go through, maybe that just adds a little bit layer and a texture of roughness to you. I mention this because yesterday we celebrated Yom Ha'atzmaut. We celebrated Israel's Independence Day. Now, as far as I'm concerned, this is the biggest miracle that's happened to the Jewish people in 2,000 years. I mean, we've prayed and prayed and prayed about seeing Zion and going to Zion and coming to Zion. And by God, in 1948, these Zionists, who against all odds, there was no chance that these people were going to be able to pull this off, pulled it off. They actually created a country called the State of Israel. And it was miraculous. I mean, there's nothing to talk about. But the State of Israel was born in conflict. The day after they pronounced itself a state, Arab countries declared war on Israel. And Israel had to go through the War of Independence, the Sinai campaign in 56, the 6-Day War, the Yom Kippur War, the war in Lebanon, the Intifada, Iran too. I mean, just day after day and day after day. So you would think that after being born in this kind of environment and always having to protect yourself, and everybody goes into service, everybody serves in the army there, you'd build up this little layer of toughness that you needed to do. But that's not really my point of what I want to say. I want to say is like this, that as we celebrate the 63rd birthday of Israel, I noticed something very strange. That here in America, the bond that we have traditionally had with Israel, I think is beginning to kind of fray a little bit. I am not sure that our youth, from teenagers to young adult, have the same emotional connection to Israel that my generation had. You understand that I'm a product of the Holocaust. My parents were survivors. I was born, 11 years after the war ended. So I still have that feeling that Israel, right or wrong, no matter what, I stand for Israel. Today, yes and no. So here in America today, our young people are questioning, well, Israel is not the same country that I grew up with, was always under danger of being extinguished. Today Israel is the bully in the Middle East, they say. Today Israel is occupying land, they say. As a matter of fact, at UCI in Irvine, they always put together this, Israel Apartheid Week. It's Israel Hate Week, basically. And this year, as I look down the number of speakers, I can't guarantee that this number is true, but it seemed that 80% of the speakers at Israel's Hate Week at UCI were Jewish. Jewish! I call them Jewish anti-Semites. Maybe a little harsh, but I believe that's true. Now you say to me, Rabbi, why are you surprised? All through the Bible, Jacob's biggest enemy was his brother. The Jews fought against each other all the way through the Kingdom 1, Kingdom 2. It was Jew against Jew. In our history, it's always been that our worst enemies have come, not from the outside, but from the inside. Yes, that's true. And I understand that and I know that, and maybe it shouldn't surprise me, but coming from my perspective, after the Holocaust, you would have said to yourself, you know what? The world doesn't like us. 6 million Jews, innocent Jews, Men, women, and 1.5 million children were killed during the Holocaust. You would think that we would close ranks. We would look at each other and say to ourselves, you know what, brothers and sisters, the world doesn't care what happens to us. No one raised a voice. At least we ourselves should speak with one voice. At least we ourselves should put aside our differences. I'm not talking about in Israel itself. We need vigorous discussion in Israel. That's what democracy is all about. I don't believe in that one-party system. I think we need to have a healthy, robust political system in Israel. But when it comes to defending Israel against its sworn enemies, its enemies like Hamas, which just recently went into a pact with the Palestinian Authority, Hamas that does not recognize Israel's right of existence. Imagine that. Is there a country today that doesn't recognize America's right of existence? Are there still people that have said that America is still a vassal state of Britain, or that America has no right to exist? Could you imagine that? That Israel, a member of the United Nations, still has an organization that sits at its border that refuses to recognize its existence. And there are Jews that support Hamas. There are Jews that support Hezbollah, vowed, sworn enemies to Israel's destruction. This I don't understand. How low do you have to go? How much do you have to hate yourself to be able to stand up in front of a crowd and call for Israel's disappearance? That just shocks me. So why am I telling you this? What's the message today, ladies and gentlemen? We need to stand stronger in support of Israel than ever. Than ever, I say to you. We can't allow our guard to go down. We can't. And I thank God for their people in our congregation that are on the forefront of this fight. And I bless them. And they're day after day on the vanguard of finding out who, what, when, and where. And we need to support this kind of vigilance against our enemies. Because if we as a Jewish community in America and the rest of the world don't stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel, then the nations of the world, the Gentiles, look and say, look, if Jews aren't supporting Israel, why do I need to? So ladies and gentlemen, get educated. Find out what the true facts are. Don't believe the media. Don't believe the haters. Go and do your own research. Find out what's going on. So when you're around the water cooler at work and someone says something about Israel being a bully or being an occupier or denying rights, you'll be well informed and you won't have to slink away like the coward that you are or the coward that I am. And you'll be able to defend staunchly this beautiful, wonderful country. We don't have 50 countries. There aren't 50 Jewish countries. There aren't 40, 30, 20, or 10. There's one. One little Israel, and we need to defend that state. So happy birthday, land of Israel. I wish you many, 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 many more happy birthdays in prosperity and in good health and in peace and in security. And may we all see that final blessing that God has promised us, that we wait for every day, the coming of the Mashiach Tzidkenu, when the whole world will recognize that this little country is a beacon of light to the world and a blessing to the world. And it will usher in a complete era of peace and prosperity for all men. Thank you for listening. Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you.